I was and am still weary of, the celebration of it. I'm so happy to be in remission, but I worry a lot, that it could come back. I rang the bell the first time. I didn't ring the bell the second time because I was mad at the bell. My name is Shannon. I am from Minnesota, and I was diagnosed with choriocarcinoma in 2019. I would say the last 5 to 6 years have been kind of like a blur, and sort of felt like my life was sort of put on pause while the whole rest of the world went on as usual. In 2018, in September, my husband and I found out that we were pregnant and we were expecting our first child. So we were, all sorts of scared, excited about the future and all of that. After about 5 weeks after finding out that I was pregnant, I started experiencing some symptoms, spotting, and things like that. And so I contacted my provider to see, is this normal? What's going on? Of course, did a lot of Googling, and I know that that can happen in your first trimester, things like that. But we went in and I got an ultrasound. And after that, they told me that I was miscarrying. The results also showed a chance of something called a molar pregnancy. And so that was something that they could kind of see on the ultrasound as well. But my provider didn't think that that was going to be a concern. But she brought me in, I saw her, and since the molar pregnancy was brought up, she did want to do a D&C just to make sure that we removed all of the tissue, because with a molar pregnancy, there's a chance that it can turn into something more serious. I had a D&C procedure, and my pathology came back negative for molar pregnancy. So after that, she kind of just said, you're free to go. You're free to try again. I continued to spot. I continued to bleed. And it sort of started to increase to, passing clots that were larger, just very concerning. So I contacted my provider again, and I said, explained to them what was happening, and basically was told that as long as it wasn't like super serious bleeding, like hemorrhaging, this is normal and can happen after these procedures. So I kind of went on again with kind of my life, and it just never really got better. I contacted the doctor a couple times about it, but was just met with, give it time. But after about 2 months of this, so now we're in November, the day after Thanksgiving, my husband and I were supposed to, or it was Thanksgiving actually, my husband and I were going to go on a trip. We were going to say we're not doing like family stuff. We're just going to take time for ourselves. We've been through a lot, and go on vacation. But the day we were supposed to leave, I didn't feel good. I still didn't feel good. I still didn't, I was still bleeding. And at this point too, I think my overall just stomach didn't feel right. I wasn't having a lot of pain, but just like cramping a little bit. And there's just that gut feeling you get when something's not right. And I had that this whole time. I had that. So we decided to go to the walk-in clinic. And in the walk-in clinic, telling the provider my symptoms there, you could tell they were visibly kind of worried, knowing what I had kind of gone through. And so we did another ultrasound, and the ultrasound came back basically the same as my first, that it looked like I had a molar pregnancy. And I was just very upset. I mean, I had the surgery, but after the surgery with molar pregnancies, sometimes the tissue can continue to grow and it can progress into something a lot more serious. That's kind of what I had mentioned earlier. So that had happened. And so I had another surgery, another DNC the next day. Vacation canceled. So had surgery. And when I was talking to, so I had a new doctor at this time, and he was a lot, I could tell he was taking this a lot more serious than the first time around. And told me, I'm at this time 34 years old. And, he mentioned to me when we were going into surgery, he said another option would be hysterectomy. And this was my first pregnancy. And I wasn't ready to make that decision. I didn't know kind of what our future would hold. And so I said, I'm not ready to do that now. And he was just giving me that option, wasn't pressuring anything or saying I had to do it. But so we went on with just a normal DNC procedure. My pathology did come back positive for molar pregnancy. So after that, things ramped up pretty quickly on the serious side. After we got those results, my provider called me and told me, and I had never heard of this. This is something that was new to me. Of course, when I heard it, I was researching the internet and stuff, but just it's so rare. And the fact that my provider had told me that, in my first pathology came back negative, I wasn't too concerned with it. But I started to worry a lot after that because he said, I'm going to have you meet with an oncologist. And at that moment, I remember just almost kind of having a panic attack moment where I was like, it had escalated quickly into something that I was just like shocked this was even happening. Meeting with my oncologist and having, PET scans, MRIs, it was scary because, he was very upfront with me saying if it did spread, we have to check your brain, we have to check your lungs. So it was very, very scary to go into those tests not knowing, what was going to be the outcome. So I went through all of the testing and it was all good news. Nothing had spread. Everything was contained to the one spot in my uterus. And they were going to monitor me closely to kind of see what happens. And in this case, with this type of cancer, they're able to monitor it with HCG levels, which is actually just the pregnancy hormone. So if I were to pee on a pregnancy test, that would show positive if I basically still had a tumor, which is crazy. So I would go in for blood draws every week, get my HCG tested, and if the number was going down, that was good news. If it was going up, I knew I was going to have to start chemotherapy. From December on, every week I went in and I got my levels drawn and they were dropping, but they started to drop pretty slowly. And I, got them drawn January every week, February every week, March. And in March, they were down to like 200, or actually, they were down to like 500 something. And then they started to go up. So each week waiting for those results was torture. It was just like looking at my phone for the results when they would come in and my stomach would drop and I'd look at them. And that week that they had gone up, it was crazy. I just knew that was when I was going to have to start chemotherapy. Well, here I am. It's real breezy now. What a difference a day makes. My treatment plan was chemotherapy, and it was actually 5 different chemo drugs that I would take. When my treatment plan was shown to me, there were a couple of options I could do. There was a lower risk chemo that I could do, which was 1 drug. And then there was this higher risk category that was 5 drugs. And in talking with my oncologist, we kind of decided to go the harder route, just to make sure that this was going to take care of it, after it had been in my system for a while. I think that was the biggest concern. So it was 5 different drugs. I did a total of 3 rounds, and a round for me was on days 1 and 2. I would stay in the hospital and have 2 drugs on day one, or sorry, 3 drugs on day one. One of the drugs would drip for 12 hours. So that's why I had to stay in the hospital. And um, then I would go home, and then on day 8, I would go back into the infusion center and have 2 other drugs administered. So I did 3 rounds of that, which last I think it was around 3 months, of that. So I'd take a little bit of a break in between each round just to get my blood levels back up to where they needed to be to do more. Side effects, I didn't have a lot, honestly, outside of losing my hair, which was probably one of the hardest things. Here she is. So then I just kind of flip it around and throw her on. And this has been amazing for me. I spend way less time getting ready. Overall feeling, sick. Yeah, I didn't feel good, going through it. And it was sort of the days after chemo that were the worst. It was feeling, very low energy. I didn't really want to do anything but just get stuck on the couch, and just kind of didn't feel good generally. So after we got rid of the cancer the first time, I, went back to life as usual and tried to, get back to feeling good again. Hair started growing back, all of that. Uh, I was doing HCG draws, every month after my first treatment was done, to make sure nothing was coming back. Months turned into every 3 months, every 6 months, and then it kind of went down to yearly. So I hadn't had my blood drawn for about a year, and I started to feel, this was now about 4 years after, started to feel like bloated. Just not feeling well, like feeling like my stomach was, I guess bloated is the best way to put it. Just feeling like my stomach was always full. My pants were fitting tighter, and just kind of like not feeling well again. And these feelings, I was worried because they felt kind of like I felt the first time around. But I really didn't take myself seriously about it, because I was like, there's no way this is back after 4 years, in the clear. Like, it's so rare. Like, there's just no way. Um, but my symptoms, were worrisome enough. And I also was due for my blood draw. So I was like, I'll get my blood draw and it'll be nothing. It'll be something else. And my numbers came back in February of 2023, way, way high. They were higher than they'd ever been the first time. It was 330,000. And I'm supposed to be negative. I mean, I'm negative is under 5 for levels. No chance of pregnancy. That was what was happening. It was back. They knew at this point that I was going to have a hysterectomy, and I was okay with that. At this point, I didn't want to risk any chance of this thing coming back. During the time that I was in remission, my husband and I kind of decided that we weren't going to pursue kids, and it was still worrisome for me. I think too that something might happen if we were to. So I met with a surgical oncologist, who was great, and talked about hysterectomy and how that was going to go. she felt my belly and she told me that like I was the size of someone who's 16 weeks along. Like this tumor was pretty big at this point, and that's why I had been feeling, bloated and not well. So hysterectomy was plan, like the first plan, part of the plan, and then the second part was chemotherapy again. And they did go back and forth about maybe a hysterectomy would be good enough. But after they did the hysterectomy and tested the pathology, it came back as choriocarcinoma, which is kind of like this escalating even more into something that can spread if it's not treated. So that worried them enough to be like, we should do chemotherapy as well. And I didn't want to do it, but I was ready to do it because I didn't want to risk that this had spread anywhere else. So we did a full hysterectomy, uterus, tubes, and cervix, and then left my ovaries, which was good. So I've got my hormones left.
So I do spend quite a few days having pity parties for myself where I just don't feel good. So like, it's been a week since I had treatment, but I'm still kind of like dealing with the effects, right? You get the drug and then they send you home and then you kind of deal with the effects as they happen.
Chemotherapy the second time was again 5 different drugs. This was third line treatment now, so 2 of the drugs changed. So I had the first 3 drugs that were the same on days 1 and 2. Day 8, I had a new drug that was introduced. And the second time around was way harder than the first time. The new drug on day 8 really, really kicked me when I was already down. That one was tough. So new symptoms. I mean, I feel like I was a lot more bloated and things. I think I was on a lot of steroids too, like my face kind of puffed up, hair loss again, when I had just worked so hard on growing it all back. And I was a lot weaker during these rounds. I ended up doing a total of 4, so 1 more than the first time around. And I think this was about 3 months again that I went through got through treatment. I believe it was the end of July in 2023. Hit remission, and my HCG was again negative. And it felt great, but I think it was so tough going through this the first time to have it happen again. I think I was and am still weary of, the celebration of it. I'm so happy to be in remission, but I worry a lot, that it could come back. I rang the bell the first time. I didn't ring the bell the second time because I was mad at the bell. And there were a lot of other things that happened just after that. A lot of symptoms. They had thought I had gone into menopause. I was having a lot of just symptoms of menopause, but that kind of turned out that the chemo was just like messing with my ovaries while I was going through it, and that was kind of what caused that. So coming out of that and getting my body back to normal with my hormones, and I had lost my uterus, and that was a new normal for me. So there was just a lot more after this one. I guess a lot more to recover from. I was so grateful to be in remission again, but it was just a lot of recovery that I felt like it sort of took 2 years to feel like I'm back to my normal or getting back there. So recently, it's been 2 years now, and just recently I feel like I'm coming out of the darkness a little bit of all of it. So it took longer the second time to snap out of it, but I'm getting there, and every day is better. You have to put your life completely on hold for this. I mean, something like this it becomes the most important thing for you to do, is to fight for your life, basically. And so, the dreams that you had with careers or just things that you wanted to do, sort of just get put on pause while you fight. And in that process, friendships can change, relationships change, and your future changes, things that you maybe thought you wanted to do, and all of that just kind of, you have to sort of reconsider all of those things in a different way because you've had so much time where you haven't been able to focus on the things that maybe you wanted to. So I think, and I wouldn't say that's a terrible thing either. A lot of things changed for us and things we're doing now that we wouldn't have ever imagined doing if things would have gone a different way, I think. So I think it's just the feeling so disconnected from the world around you for so long, and then having to reintroduce yourself to it when you come out of fighting that fight. And then for me, having to go back into it and come out again was extra hard, to just sort of get back into it. And in your perspective on life changes after you go through something like that. So it's just hard to get back into the groove of things when, you've been through so much. I think the one thing that I won't ever be able to get back is just it's more of a mental state, I guess, of after you've gone through something like that. It's, you look at the world a little different, which can be a good thing, right? You're sort of, every day is a blessing. I mean, you really start to think about it that way. But I feel like I lost a part of me, and I don't know if it was a spark maybe that I lost. Going through something like that, you can start to get a little bit more negative about things. And I've always been a very positive person. Even while I was going through all of this, I put every positive spin I could on it. I wanted to make everyone around me feel comfortable. I wanted to make them laugh when we wanted to cry. And so I love to do that. And it's like, I didn't want people to worry about me. And the second time around was harder to do that. It's, you sort of lose just like positivity, I guess. One thing that I learned throughout this whole journey that I've been on is advocating for yourself is so important. As you kind of heard in the beginning of my story, things were missed, but your body the best, more than anyone. And if you feel like something isn't right, in a lot of cases, something isn't right. And, pushing for tests, finding another doctor if the one that you have isn't listening to you, reaching out to people for help, I feel like is so important. And I wish I would have done that earlier in my journey. I wish I would have pushed more when I wasn't feeling right. I wish I would have gotten another opinion. And I think that those are all things that, we're able to do, and reach out to people for help. So I would say, like, advocating for yourself and knowing your body, your body best, and not stopping until you feel like you've got the answers that you need.